Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a video all about skin scents versus beast mode fragrances. What are the advantages and disadvantages of wearing skin scents or beast mode fragrances? In what situations would I choose one or the other? I'm also going to make a decision as to whether I would choose to wear beast mode or skin scent fragrances for the rest of my life if I had to make a decision. And this video is based on a tag that was created by Claire Smurfy Girly here on YouTube. And she tagged me, so I thought I'd better do this video. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith and I make videos all about perfume and perfume science a little bit. And if that kind of thing interests you, then please do consider subscribing, and also please like this video if you do enjoy this video. So let's get on with this. So both categories of fragrance really get quite a bad rap, don't they? Most people don't want a skin scent, most people don't want a beast mode fragrance. Most people want to wear something that's somewhere in between that scale of extremes. If you want one or the other most of the time in your life, then you're quite unusual, I would say. Both fragrance types, though, do have their individual niches in times in your life when you may choose one over the other. There are particular times when you really want to be smelt, and there are other times when you really don't, but you perhaps still want to wear a fragrance. So let's start with skin scents. So people can define skin scents in various different ways. Some people even describe a skin scent as something that smells like skin. I'm not talking about that kind of skin scent. I'm talking about a skin scent that just has a very small bubble of projection that sits very close to the skin. It's something very intimate. It's something that perhaps you would wear if you're at home or perhaps going to bed. Something that doesn't bother you, something you only smell in tiny wafts, or that you have to smell your own skin to be able to detect. And I really think that certain note profiles really work with skin scents and other ones don't. So the ones that I think that really work for a skin scent are things that are musky. Musky fragrances that like ambrette, or perhaps light woods like sandalwood. Sweet fragrances like vanillas, woody vanillas especially, I think work well as skin scents. I think even things like nutty scents and even powdery scents. Powdery florals like heliotrope, hawthorn, iris and mimosa all make absolutely amazing skin scents. I think those kinds of notes really are the ones that are best suited to skin scent fragrances. I think, you know, if you had a skin scent that was patchouli, it just wouldn't be the same, would it? There are certain notes and certain profiles of fragrance that are more suited to that kind of fragrance type. So skin scents for me suggest delicacy, tenderness, and can even be quite intimate. I always make parallel with skin scents that you're perhaps reading a naughty book on a public transport. You're perhaps on a train or a bus and you're reading something that's pure filth. And basically nobody knows, do they? If you don't have a book with a particular cover on it, no one is going to know what you're reading. It's that kind of feeling that I get from wearing a skin scent. It's something that you don't share with other people. But it's your little secret, it's your little feeling of intimacy with yourself. And actually, you know, you can choose whether to show someone your dirty book or not. And you can choose to let somebody smell your intimate fragrance as well. And that is incredibly sexy, isn't it, in a way? I think that's sometimes more sexy than a beast mode fragrance. That's the thing with skin scents for me. It's when you hug someone and you don't know they're wearing fragrance and then you suddenly smell it. It's just so seductive. Equally with skin scents, whether you enjoy them or not is kind of a question of why you would wear fragrance in the first place. If you wear fragrance to get compliments from everybody and anyone that you possibly interact with, skin scents can be ruled out completely right now, because that's the idea of skin scents. People aren't going to smell you. So of course the amount of compliments you are going to get is going to be much lower. But perhaps the compliments from people who actually matter to you are going to be just as high. I think in reality the number of people who wear fragrances purely for compliments is going to be incredibly low. Most people wear fragrances for themselves, and compliments are something that are just nice to have. They're an incidental. So I think really for most people skin scents will be an option. I think there's also a little bit of a bias in the fragrance market because of this kind of notion that skin scents can't be smelt by other people. And therefore people see them as poorer value, because why would you spend hundreds of pounds on a fragrance that won't be smelt by other people? I think this is just a personal choice thing, isn't it? It's something that you just have to make a decision on from your own point of view. Just because something's not a beast mode fragrance doesn't mean it's not long lasting. It doesn't mean it's not complex. it doesn't mean it's a simple fragrance. It just means that it isn't loud, and that is sometimes inherent to the beauty of the fragrance. Sometimes it goes hand in hand with the nature of the fragrance, and there are really good examples of this. For example, Rolling in Love is one of those fragrances. Kilian's Rolling in Love I have actually reviewed as part of a collaboration video which can be found on Jon Snow's channel. I will link it in the cards above and also down below. And that fragrance was revolutionary because basically it was advertised as a skin scent. It was something that was promoted as a skin scent. And for something at that price point, that was a very daring thing to do, because that could potentially alienate quite a lot of your fragrance market by doing that. But really, Kilian were just very bold, and they knew that they had a great idea with that fragrance. They knew that they wanted to put forward a feeling of intimacy with it, and that is what that fragrance achieves with its quiet nature. That fragrance really caused a split in the market. There were people who understood what Kilian were trying to do, and then there were other people who really didn't understand and who couldn't understand why this one wasn't a banger and why it was so expensive when people couldn't smell it. Having tried Rolling in Love and a number of dupes of Rolling in Love, they mainly have two different problems. The first problem, and probably the most obvious problem, is that a lot of the dupe fragrances smell nothing like Rolling in Love. The other problem that I have with a lot of the dupe fragrances is that they are much, much stronger than Rolling in Love, which completely takes away, just completely defeats where Rolling in Love was going with that fragrance. You can't have a dupe for Rolling in Love that is loud. That just isn't Rolling in Love. That isn't what that fragrance is about. That fragrance is about intimacy. Another fragrance that gets touted as a skin scent is Glossier You. And I understand what people mean by this. They mean that it sits quite close to the skin and it doesn't really leave much of a trail. But I do think this fragrance, you get it in wafts, and I think that's what's so lovely about this fragrance. And it is one of those fragrances that has those notes that really does suggest your skin but better. It's got those musks and the powderiness that gives you that impression of a skin-like quality. I think it's really the note profile of this fragrance and the gentleness and the intimacy of it that makes people think of it as a skin scent, when perhaps it is actually something that does project a little bit at least, but people don't really recognise it because it's something that's quite indistinct. It's something that's quite ethereal in a way. So Glossier You is another skin scent. There's also the option of getting skin scents from fragrances that generally aren't skin scents. So if you buy a perfumed oil or a rollable fragrance, then the fragrance is actually targeted to a small area of your skin, and so it doesn't project as much as a spray perhaps would. So Kayali's Cocoa Vanille and also Sweet Diamond Pick Pepper are available as rollables, and these are much quieter fragrances than the equivalent sprays. I do have samples of the sprays and I have compared them. And these do sit much closer to the skin. You just generally don't smell these as much on you when you wear them as an oil as opposed to when you wear them as a spray. There's also that really unfortunate category of fragrances that are perhaps not meant to be skin scents but actually are skin scents. And those are the ones that give skin scents a bad rap, because actually if fragrance houses just said, well, this fragrance doesn't really project that well, but you might want to buy it anyway because it's still a really pretty fragrance, then people, would be more accepting of it. But when you buy something expecting projection and you don't get it, that's when you feel disappointed by them. So two in my collection that I would say are mainly skin scents for most of their life, but do project a little bit initially, are things like Alien Eau Extraordinaire. So this fragrance I've just finished over the summer. And this is one that did somewhat disappoint me with the amount that I could actually smell it when I was wearing it. And actually it was better in the springtime rather than the summer, but really it was quite a quiet fragrance in the main. And that may have something to do with the notes in this fragrance. It's quite a citrusy fragrance, and also obviously it has that sort of alien DNA, but you don't expect an alien flanker to be a skin scent. That's quite an unusual thing. Another couple of fragrances in my collection that are things that I really consider to be mainly skin scents, unless I massively overspray them, are things like Daisy Dream by Marc Jacobs. So this one is something that is really a skin scent in every weather condition other than that cool spring weather. Summer, you are never ever going to smell this from any distance. This is very much a very close to the skin fragrance in the summer. Springtime, you might get more out of it, but really disappointing performance in the summertime. Another one that I consider to be a skin scent, and actually I used mainly as like a refreshing body spray in the summertime, was L'Eau d'Issy Floral by Issey Miyake. This one really was very close to the skin. So there's those kind of slightly disappointing fragrances in my collection that really are things that don't mean to be skin scents, that aren't marketed as skin scents, but do tend towards being a skin scent after a very short period of time. So say you have a skin scent fragrance, but you really wanted to project a little bit more. What can you do about that? Well, you can massively overspray it. That's a very obvious way of trying to get it to project more. But it's more important about where you spray it. So spray it in areas that have more movement. So spray it perhaps on your arms, spray it on the outer layer of your clothing, because if you spray something under a jumper or under several layers of clothing on your skin, you aren't going to smell that. So yeah, having it on the outside of whatever you're wearing is going to mean that other people are more likely to be able to smell it. Also, you could perhaps consider spraying it in your hair, but bear in mind that fragrance is generally alcohol based, so that you might not want to do that if you're worried about how much it would dry your hair out if you're doing it on a regular basis. But really on a one-off kind of situation, I feel like spraying in your hair can be quite a useful way of getting a skin scent to project. So moving on to beast mode fragrances, what are the situations where you might want to use a beast mode fragrance? Well, beast mode fragrances are things that are useful when there are a lot of people around, or when other people might be wearing very strong fragrances too, and you have to almost compete with them. They're good in situations where you want to attract a lot of attention to yourself as well. So say you're in a social situation where you want to be noticed. Well, wearing a beast mode fragrance is a surefire way to do that. And actually, being noticed can be both a positive and a negative thing for some people. So some people lack a bit of confidence and perhaps want some way to announce themselves or to make some kind of statement about themselves. But also it can make people feel a little bit uncomfortable, perhaps if they're not quite as confident as they actually think they are, and then they walk in somewhere and you're perhaps aware of your smell. That can be a little bit, discomforting, I suppose, in a way. Even whether people can or can't, or whether they even notice it, it can make you feel uncomfortable because you can be wondering what people are thinking about your fragrance. Beast mode fragrances can also be used to enhance your mood. So perhaps you're feeling very outgoing, like you want to party. Wearing a beast mode fragrance can really enhance that feeling and can make you more in the zone. Can make you, it's like preloading with drinks, isn't it, before you go out? You know, getting ready, putting your makeup on, dressing up nicely, wearing a nice fragrance is just another layer of that kind of going out mentality. I think the situation when I want to feel confident in my life is when I'm lecturing, and I will often wear a stronger fragrance when I'm lecturing because people are quite far away from me, and it just gives me a feeling of being ready, of being prepared. So for example, I was lecturing on Friday and I wore Alien because that fragrance is quite a strong one and it just gives me a boost. It makes me feel more present, more in the moment and more confident. I think as well there are certain fragrance notes that really suit beast mode fragrances. So I think typically beast mode fragrances generally have a very strong base. They have something like patchouli, which I sort of look at as the rock musician of the fragrance world. They perhaps also have something like oud in them, or leather, something that's a little bit heavier, there's something that sticks around a bit more. But they will also have something sort of zingy or floral in them, so particularly fruity notes. So something like raspberry, pineapple, those are very zingy kind of fragrance notes that really give it a little bit of a punch. And I really feel like those work really well in beast mode fragrances. Also floral notes, so heavy white florals such as jasmine, tuberose, yellow florals like ylang ylang also really work really well in beast mode fragrances. And also certain types of rose as well, such as Taif rose, for example, is a really, really banging fragrance note. So you can see the kind of split there between the notes that I think work well in beast mode fragrances and the ones that I think work well in more skin scent kind of fragrances. So in my fragrance collection, I do think that I do have some stronger fragrances, but they are things that you can wear in particular ways to tone them up or down, and you can control how strong a fragrance feels by where you spray it and how much you spray it. So as I've said, Alien is a great example of a beast mode fragrance. Even the newer formulation is really quite strong in a way, and again, you can tone it where you spray it and how much you spray it. Another couple of fragrances in my collection that are vintage ones that do have a feeling of being stronger to me are things like Angel by Mugler. So this one is just a really strong patchouli fragrance, and this one is nuclear. A couple of sprays, you're good, and actually it's a really long lasting fragrance as well. Another one that I think is quite an interesting fragrance in a way, because it's not a traditional fragrance that you would think of as beast mode, but it really is very strong, and that is Flora Botanica by Balenciaga. So this fragrance is a very fresh kind of minty rose, but with a cannabis note in it, and it's just so strong and long lasting. You don't often find summery fragrances that are really, really strong, and this is a really good example of that. A fragrance brand that I would really class as beast mode in the main are Montal. Montal fragrances are generally very, very strong, and I have Intense Cafe, and I would say that this one is also something that you don't need many sprays of, really projects, really loud, and something that is really quite a beast mode fragrance. Another brand that I really consider to be quite beast mode in the main is Mancera. Mancera are slightly more toned down, but a lot of their fragrances are incredibly strong. Yeah, if you're looking for a beast mode fragrance, maybe go for a Mancera or a Montal fragrance. And I think finally in my collection, there's another category of fragrance that really are generally beast mode fragrances. And those are the more Middle Eastern leaning fragrances. So for example, a Mir Al Oud Intense Oud is like a stealth beast mode fragrance. I stopped smelling this on me, but I know that other people find this one completely overwhelming. My husband in particular is someone who goes, whoa, when he walks into the room, because he can smell this so much on me. So that one is definitely a beast mode fragrance. And of course, the one that I called my most offensive fragrance, because I just know how strong it is Sheikh Al Shook by Lattafa, Luxe Edition. This one is just very, very strong to me, and it's something that I generally choose particular occasions to wear because I know that it does last for days, and it is just quite a lot if you're in a confined space. I wouldn't subject anyone to this in a car, for example. So that's probably one of my strongest fragrances, Sheikh Al Shook by Lattafa. And I think that's really it with me with beast mode fragrances. The thing that puts me off with beast mode fragrances is my concern for other people and how they're feeling, because I have been subject to other people's fragrances in small spaces at work. For example, I work in an open office with around 6 to 8 people at a time in my office. And there was one lady who constantly wore a tobacco and amber fragrance every single day, and she would reapply throughout the day. And it was overwhelming. And eventually people, not me, but people complained about this fragrance because it was giving them headaches. They could smell it all the way down the corridor, and ultimately she had to stop wearing it because it was causing upset at work. And generally you never want to be that social pariah, do you? You don't want to be the person who's complained about. She had the best of intentions. She was wearing a fragrance. She was probably thinking that she smelled quite nice. She did smell quite nice, just not for 7 or 8 hours a day quite nice, if you know what I mean. It was just quite overwhelming. Also for me, as someone who considers themselves quite an introverted person, beast mode fragrances just generally say, look at me, don't they? They're quite an announcement of you being there. And I sometimes just don't want to feel that. I don't want to draw attention to myself quite a lot of the time. And I'm not someone who is a loud person in real life. I'm not someone who wants to make a big thing of myself. So beast mode fragrances are like me trying to be someone else sometimes, and sometimes I don't want to be someone else. I want to be myself, and so beast mode fragrances don't always fit with my mood. I think really though, beast mode fragrances can give you that perception of someone having an extroverted personality, and that really isn't always true, is it? I do wear beast mode fragrances, but I'm not someone who would ever call myself an extrovert. So you know, I don't think it's fair to associate particular personalities with particular types of fragrance. I think really the crux of the thing with beast mode fragrances and why they are loved is because they garner compliments, don't they? If you're someone who loves a compliment, and let's face it, most of us love a compliment. Why wouldn't you love a compliment? It's not a dirty thing, is it, to love a compliment? It's a nice thing. But, you know, that's why people like them, because if someone can actually smell your fragrance, you're halfway to a compliment. If no one can smell your fragrance, you're never going to get a compliment. So that is a massive tick, isn't it, in the box for beast mode fragrances. So finally, if I had to choose out of my collection that I could only choose a beast mode fragrance or a skin scent fragrance for the rest of my life, which would I choose? Well, I think that I just don't always feel like wearing a beast mode fragrance. So I think I would always have to choose a skin scent. But I would say that I don't always want to choose a skin scent. I like a variety in my life and I value that variety, and I would be incredibly upset if I had to choose one or the other. And I quite like that feeling of being able to be almost a different person or to enhance different aspects of my personality through wearing different types of fragrance and different strengths of fragrances as well. So yeah, I'm sitting on the fence a little bit, but I probably would just choose a skin scent because you can do things to enhance them, and I think wearing a beast mode fragrance for the rest of my life would just become annoying. So what about you? What would you choose if you had to choose one type of fragrance to wear for the rest of your life? Would you wear a beast mode fragrance or would you wear a skin scent fragrance? And also let me know, do you find beast mode fragrances on other people annoying? Do you think there are certain circumstances where nobody should wear a beast mode fragrance? Do you find skin scents sexy, or do you just think they're boring? Please let me know, and also thank you so much for watching this video, and if you haven't already subscribed, then please do consider subscribing, and also please like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.